Plot armor, a lack of depth, inconsistent motivations, uninteresting characterization, weak character development are all things that plague other protagonists in the shonen genre, but not Isagi Yoichi. My claim, he's the best. You can beat me up in the streets if you want, but I guarantee you by the time this video ends, you will at the very least have a way better appreciation for his character, and at best, you'll think as I do. To understand Isagi as a whole, we need to go over his introduction. Isagi's introduction is clean, strong, and unique. We hear his desire to go to nationals, set goal as close as the next second to the present moment. But instead, he passes the ball to a human-shaped cone. Said cone misses, his dreams fade in an instant as if he woke up. It would only be later in the episode that he'll truly have his awakening. When he meets Ego, the idea of team above oneself that was instilled in him over years was shattered, and thus begins his journey to become the world's best. In writing, one must give the audience a character trait people will like, a goal that they can get behind, and a flaw. All three were done efficiently, albeit it does seem a little bit standard on paper. You know, he wants to be the world's best, he lacks the skill and some confidence, but he has a hard-working mindset. What's genius is taking these familiar things and achieving them in a way most manga won't, by diving into the psychology behind being the best. Not just training hard, no, what separates the mind of the mediocre from the minds of the greats. And BLUELOCK has a somewhat controversial answer, and that is ego. Most people think ego is bad. Like, if you say something egotistical, people will be like, oh, don't be egotistical. Like, shut up. So this setup immediately makes Isagi's story very interesting and very compelling, how it's kind of a deviation from the norm. But now, for the real star of the show. And that is, Isagi is actually an underdog. Not like Naruto, who has a QB up his ass and the most chakra in the series and the reincarnation of Jesus, or Deku, who was literally given the roadmap to be the best, or Luffy with one of the most broken devil fruits, or even Goku, who has goddamn Zenkai. No, Isagi is actually washed at football and isn't that good at anything physically speaking. All he has is his mind and his desire to do whatever it takes to win. He is a mid player for like 100 chapters. Most manga make their MC pretty strong after the first arc, and they have crazy spikes in strength which can make it feel unearned. It has only been in the last few games which Isagi has been comfortably in the top 3, arguably only the last 2. Which, think about it, most protagonists beat their final villain of their second arc, not Isagi. Most characters have an unfair access to resources and powers, not Isagi. His only weapon is his vision and good IQ, but he's not like Aizen, right? There are 5 niggas who have just as good IQ in the fucking series and better stats. He slowly improves every single match. Every single match he learns something, like his off the ball, and then he learns how to use his vision better. All of these stuff slowly build up, bit by bit by bit. And this type of slow progression makes every single match exhilarating to see how he changes. And every single time Isagi gets a buff, it is set up and it is perfectly paid off. Which makes sense because we see his thought process from A to B. What other manga can you really say the main character was truly weak at the start and then became the strongest, not through unfair means but pure hard work? Answer, you can't. My goat is the only one. His superpower is literally character development. That's his power. That's his strongest ability. His strongest ability is the fact that he has character development. Like niggas, put some respect. And all of this development comes to a head when he unlocks Meta Vision. It is one of the most exhilarating and well-written power-ups I've seen in manga, and it's set up in like chapter 10, foreshadowed again, and it is a pretty simple concept, you know, rapidly turning your head, using your peripheral vision, whilst playing at full speed. Simple in theory, but difficult in execution, since it can only be accessed by people with high IQ and spatial awareness, in order to perceive and understand all of that information and process it. But Isagi has those things, and he has somebody to steal it from. See, even when he has the stuff, he still needs somebody to steal it from, right? Then he unlocks Meta Vision. The visual way that it conveys the information overload is so good, and in this instant he goes up multiple levels. This is like a Super Saiyan transformation, but it's done in a real, quote-unquote realistic way. Obviously it wouldn't really happen like this exactly in football, but this is just the culmination of all of his abilities and then something clicking in his brain to make it all work together. It is so well done, the way that it's, you know, represented, the ecstasy that Isagi feels and that the audience feels, the visual representation of the whole thing is, it's just so cool. And then it just has crazy symbolism, which we'll get back to later. Then you got his whole character, which works within the broader themes of the narrative, him discovering more and more about his own ego and other people's ego, him seeing himself as the main character and understanding that other people see himself as the main character. And some of you'll be like, oh, that's obvious, but some of y'all niggas really do act like you're the main character and everybody else is side characters and are just ignorant and fucking egotistical for no reason and don't like to take no advice, don't like to change, don't like to do nothing. It's not as obvious as you may think. Breaking down people's psychology and what leads them to do certain things, what categories people fit into, and those categories having categories, right? And then him putting himself into one of those categories and understanding what those categories mean, and originally not being happy with that category because it contradicts his own sense of self and his own importance and talent, and then changing his whole mindset on what talent is and accepting his own role in the field even though it's not what he initially thought or wanted, subsequently allowing him to understand his true motivations and get another power-up. Him constantly failing and then learning what it means to have ego, becoming more and more sure of himself and confrontational, contrasted against his nice guy demeanor, making it not some one-note character. And then even in the manga, the author says, oh, you might not even like Isagi at the end, so I don't know what's happening there, it's so crazy, but let's analyze Isagi's development and connection to the broader themes in my favorite game, Manshine City. In this game, we have themes around God and the sighted leading the blind. Yukimiya is blinded by his own sense of protagonism and is blinded physically by an ailment which he deems as just an obstacle given to him by God, whilst Isagi has unlocked a new vision, seeing himself as God, Isagi clashing with him, calling him out on his ignorance, and the fact that Yuki needs to side with him because that is the logical way for them to win. But Yuki calls out Isagi on Isagi's true motive of him just wanting to submit to Isagi for his own goals, not actually caring about Yuki's situation, something Isagi isn't even fully aware of himself. And later, this identity of a godlike savior is shown to be false, and the truth is he is also caught up in his own ego and is only still a man. So he hones in on a single achievable goal, dethroning God's chosen emperor by teaming up with somebody who has also cast aside God's will. And in the ending of the match, Isagi uses his sight to pass to the blinded knight, cutting down the enemy, and Isagi grabs the emperor, calling back to an earlier chapter and saying, how does it feel to be the crown of my story? This fire, bro, this is fire. And this is one match, by the way. Some manga would be happy to have this level of symbolism and thematic consistency across its entirety. And though not all to this level, Blue Lock is filled with these themes and psychology and symbolism which are all perfectly centered around Isagi Yoichi. Even down to his design, which is simple, does something that I always like, where they make an unassuming main character look regular to contrast his true complexity. But even in that, you have design elements like his bigger eyes, foreshadowing to his vision, and this pointy thing which Ego Jinpachi also has, alluding to the similarities. Weapons perfectly complementing his character, him just fucking aura farming. In conclusion, conceptually, Isagi is a character that deviates from the norms of shonen. He is a very well written underdog, which is actually an underdog. He has interesting characterizations, great character development. As I said, his power is character development, thematic symbolism with all of his like powers and all of the matches, him having great dynamics with the rest of the cast. Yeah, in conclusion, I'm right. I should play, man. Go away, 'cause you so sorry.